American culture is filled with misinformation about all aspects of sexuality on such a grand scale that it makes sense to refer to false beliefs about sexuality as sexual myths. Tonight, I'm going to concentrate on myths about masturbation. I mean, I could spend hours here with you about sexual myths, but I'm going to just talk about masturbation today. One of the great modern philosophers and the New Yorker has made many, many wise comments about masturbation. And here are two that I'd like to share with you that I think are relevant to this talk. This is the first one. Don't knock masturbation. It's sex with somebody I love. And the second is, I'm such a good lover because I practice a lot on my own. And Woody has made many important comments about sexuality and movies about sexuality. Although Americans are often perceived by the rest of the world as sexually knowledgeable and highly active, research conducted by myself and my colleagues over the past 40 years has revealed that, in fact, Americans have an extraordinary level of ignorance and misinformation about sexuality and gender and reproduction. This is probably the result of the amazing lack of comprehensive sex education in America. These myths that I'm going to talk about tonight are shared by a surprisingly large proportion of the American public at all social and educational levels, and they're passed on from generation to generation and within each generation, and in the absence of easily accessible sources of accurate, scientifically based information. And many of these false beliefs are also sustained by the medical profession, educators and media experts who are just as ignorant of the facts as are the general public. Many of these myths are not peculiar, by the way, to Americans, or in fact to Western culture in general. How do I know this to be the case? Well, one of my basic sources is the letters that I received over the 9 years that I wrote a syndicated newspaper column called the Kinsey Report that was syndicated in Asia, the Middle East, Africa, South America, Australia, and Europe. Readers wrote to me from all over the world with the same myths that Americans have. These false beliefs continue to be voiced today on the internet from users of sex education blogs and websites from around the world by both adults and teens. So I'm going to accompany this small selection of myths that I'm going to share with you today with examples of more than 50 artistic sex-related images that were produced over the last 2,000 years. I wish I could show you more. By great artists, master craftsmen, and fine artisans. These images come primarily from the Kinsey Institute archives and my own collection, and you can see more of these if you go to this website. They show some of them on the Kinsey Institute site. You know, the Kinsey Institute has probably the second largest collection of erotica. The first largest, of course, is held by the Vatican, which has been collecting for a lot longer than the Kinsey Institute. That's not a joke, it's true. I use the term erotica to refer to these works of art since I believe that the term pornography should be reserved for its legal definition. The term erotica is less value-laden and carries no legalistic or moralistic excess meaning. The root of the word pornography derives from the Greek for prostitute or harlot, and so pornography literally means to write about prostitutes. The first myth I want to address is the myth that girls and women don't masturbate, and do it rarely. This probably derives from one view of female sexuality that asserts that women are not interested in sex or turned on by it. So why would a woman masturbate? Clearly, art tells us a different story. And now it's decided not to move forward. Okay, let's see if this will work here. Yeah, there we go. This is from Japan. It's a masturbating woman beautifully robed from a Japanese pillow book done between 1830 and 1840 by Utagawa Kunisada, who's one of the great shunga artists. This is a color block print. You know that each color on this is done with a different block print. So you have to have one for each color. And the woman almost looks like she's ejaculating. This is a close-up of a woman masturbating. It's also a Shunga woodcut. This is a masturbating woman after multiple orgasms. We know that there's multiple orgasms because one of the conventions, Japanese conventions of, no, don't do that, naughty. One of the conventions of Japanese erotica is that each tissue represents an orgasm in Japanese erotic art. Also, you might have noticed that, and you will notice also in Japanese erotic art, that the genitalia are very enlarged. And that's because it's like a close-up in an erotic film. The genitalia are enlarged about 3 times their normal size in Japanese erotic art, because that's what you're supposed to be looking at. But the tissues are specially indicative of the number of orgasms and how erotic or sexy the scene is. And it's true that during this time in the 17th and 18th and 19th centuries, the Japanese made special tissues for sex. They were specially soft and felt very good on your body. And secondly, they had a very nice sound when you heard them, when you had them near your ears. So, you know, Japanese do everything nicely, especially nice. They're just very good at that. This is Chinese from 1750 to 1800. It's a watercolor on silk from the Qingping Mei, and this is a woman using a dildo. This is a particularly sexy story. It's from, the Qingping Mei is the second great Chinese erotic novel. The first one is called the Suo Pian. I wish I could tell you about that one, but I don't have time. But I'll tell you about this one. The legend says that it was written with the intention of removing a very hypocritical government minister. He was censoring young artists who produced erotic literature, even though he was a secret collector of erotica himself, and we know about hypocritical government officials. 2, it's not a new thing. Written on the very thinnest rice paper and given as a gift to this minister, the writer is said to have placed a tiny portion of poison on the upper left-hand corner of every page. In the minister's eagerness to read the very long, extremely erotic story, he would be forced to lick his fingers in order to turn the delicate pages more quickly. Now, if he were not a hypocrite, he would throw the book aside after just the first few pages because it really was very sexy. Sure enough, the minister was found early the next morning, dead in his chair, with the nearly finished novel in his lap. So it's a really good book. You have to find a translation of it. And this is a French picture of a French woman masturbating with her fantasies spinning around her head. This is late 19th century. What are the recent data on masturbation in women? Well, there's lots, but depending on the study, between 60 and 80% of American women report having masturbated sometime in their life. And for any period, twice as many men report having masturbated than do women. More interesting to me, and of those, about those who masturbate, what's interesting is to me that 60% of women report that they discovered masturbation for themselves. That's the creativity of women. We know women are very creative. While only 25% of men report inventing masturbation. The rest of men, that says 75%, say that they learned about it through descriptions, usually from their friends. So clearly, the majority of women have masturbated and probably always have. Here's a masturbation myth that seems to haunt both the youngest and the oldest members of our society the most. And that myth is that masturbation will injure you or cause illness. This is only true if you do it until it causes irritation, swelling, or tissue damage, which is really very rare. A little OCD, you have to be sort of OCD to have that happen. Scientific and medical research have demonstrated that the opposite is the case. Masturbation will not cause injury or cause illness. In fact, research shows that as you get older, and this is important, this is a takeaway, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. And this is really true. In fact, this nice Chinese painting from an album shows an adolescent, a mature man, and a senior citizen masturbating into a pot. I don't know what they're collecting it for, but It might be for a good purpose. Nevertheless, notice that the older man on your right, as you would expect, has a little bit less of an erection. But this 19th century painting on silk tells us that in China nearly 200 years ago, age was not seen or considered to be the end of sexuality or masturbation, as is believed by many Americans. In fact, for postmenopausal women who do not have a regular sexual partner, masturbation to orgasm promotes the health of the urinary and genital tracts, lowering the rate of infection. And the same is true for aging men. Research has demonstrated that masturbation will keep the sexual equipment in good working order until your next true love comes along to help you with the job. For both men and women, as they age, masturbation works just as well as partnered sex does to make things work well and keep working. And if you don't use it, you will lose it as you get older. And when you are young and inexperienced, it is one of the best ways to learn about how your body works so that you can assist your future partners in giving you pleasure. So you might ask, where do all these negative myths about masturbation being harmful to health come from? And why are the consequences for this private solo activity that doesn't affect anyone but the actor seen as so very dire and dangerous in so many different ways? Well, here's a very short history. There was a French physician named Tissot, 1728 to 1797, who wrote a book called Onanism, the dissertation on the maladies. And you know that Onan wasn't masturbating, he was spilling his seed on the ground because he wasn't having sex with his brother's wife after his brother died. You have to go to the Bible and read about it. In the mid-18th century, which was had a lasting effect on American medicine, this book, and morality and education, that's still affecting us to this day. Tissot's view was that all ejaculations were dangerous to a man's health. This was based on the false ancient Asian belief that semen was a vital fluid, meaning that it was necessary for life and health. Therefore, its loss must lead to diminished strength, resulting in damaged health. This theory, derived from ancient Indian and Chinese traditional medicine, was promoted during the 18th century, an era when the causes for disease like bacteria and viruses and genetics were unimaginable. So doctors were looking for the reason for everything. These translated principles were that all ejaculations were dangerous to a man's health. The second principle was that the loss of semen during masturbation was more dangerous than ejaculations during partnered sexual intercourse, because at least with sexual intercourse, there was an exchange of energy between the man and the woman. Whereas with masturbation, the male's loss of vitality was total. As a result of this philosophy, men in China and India strive to conserve their semen by learning to achieve orgasm without ejaculation, using the principles of Taoist philosophy, tantric yoga, among other techniques. And yes, a man can have orgasms without ejaculation. He can also have orgasms without having an erection, but that's a whole other lecture. Also, it was believed that female orgasm was essential for male health, longevity, and vigor. Now that's a good idea, I think, but we somehow, as you will see, lost that idea too. That message that orgasms were good for, female orgasms were good for men, got lost on its way from Asia to America. So what message we got was less sex, lower pleasure, somehow made you healthy. Not a good message, but we got it in spades. This 18th century French message was translated into English by American celebrity health gurus, and we have a lot of them today too. Most of the stuff they give us today is not correct, whether it's about losing weight or whatever it might be, and they weren't right in the 19th century either. And they were accepted whole cloth by the American medical and theological establishment, and then by the American public. Luckily for the French, they didn't seem to take it very seriously for very long. But we did. Moving across the Atlantic, the first major purveyor of this pseudoscience in America was the health reformer and preacher Sylvester Graham. He wrote an extremely influential book, bestseller, big bestseller, and first Graham believed that masturbation and intercourse more than once a month or 12 times a year caused most of the worst diseases for which the early 19th century medicine had no etiology or treatment. And he said things that you see on this slide. Graham preached that exceeding marital intercourse more than once a week would lead to dire consequences, including disease and even early death. Because Americans all know Graham well today. They do, because in order to protect against too much sex, he invented a treatment to lower sex drive. Graham crackers. Yes, he did. He did. He invented graham crackers, a breakfast food. He developed this whole grain food because he believed eating properly in the morning, that is graham crackers, would lower libido, that is sexual desire, and thereby facilitate the decrease of sexual activity of all kinds, particularly masturbation, resulting in increased health. There, you laugh, but it's true. You eat graham crackers in the morning. It lowers your sex drive. Less sex, no masturbation, and you don't get sick. You have health, you have physical health and mental health. Today, the association of this cookie is especially popular with babies and children, and with campfires and s'mores. With its origins as an anti-masturbation treatment is almost entirely forgotten. I bet you forgot it. Yes, you did. But it's true, and it was actually taken very seriously. Now, the second major purveyor of virulent sex-negative philosophy and pseudoscience to Americans was a follower of Graham and the next major national celebrity health guru. 50 years later, he wrote an anti-masturbation bestseller in 1892 entitled Man the Masterpiece, or Plain Truths Plainly Told About Boyhood, Youth, and Manhood. His name was John Harvey Kellogg. He also invented an anti-masturbation, anti-libido breakfast food. Cornflakes! Yes. Kellogg's presided over his sanitarium in Battle Creek, Michigan, where all the rich and powerful and famous came for the cure. You laugh. He proclaimed that masturbation caused consumption, better known today as tuberculosis, which we know now is unequivocally caused by bacteria, not masturbation or any other sexual behavior. Nevertheless, Kellogg went on to proclaim that masturbation in childhood destroyed one's later sexual capabilities. Everybody believed him. He also subscribed to Graham's view that proper, healthy, and natural frequency of sexual intercourse in marriage was not more than once a month, and then only when reproduction was possible. He became well known for his ideas on health. His Battle Creek sanitarium was renowned for his anti-masturbation food, popularized by his brother, who began promoting Kellogg's anti-masturbation diet in 1906. He preached, eat Kellogg's cornflakes in the morning, lower your sex drive, less sex, no masturbation, and no disease. By the way, the company is now the world's leading manufacturer of ready-to-eat breakfast cereals, selling more than 3 billion boxes of cereal every year. Yes, yes. As a result of this totally false teachings of Graham and Kellogg, Americans developed a strong belief that masturbation was the cause of many physical, mental, and social disorders. Remember, growing hair on your palms, becoming crazy, all kinds of things. This led American physicians and parents to go to great lengths to protect children from masturbation's imagined dangers. One example is this medical book, Moody's Medical Treatise, where he had explained how you could build anti-masturbation devices for girls, which is this one here that I'm showing you from his book. The text below the diagram says, the principal object of this apparatus is to keep things out, keep everything, fingers, candles, artificial and natural, out of the artificial and natural genital organs so that they cannot be put into the vagina or passage leading to the womb to cause pleasurable sensations by friction. Examples of anti-masturbation devices were everywhere in the 18th and 19th century. These are assorted American anti-masturbation devices. Hundreds of patents were filed in the Washington, D.C. Patent Office, during the 19th and first third of the 20th centuries. And they used to tie children to their beds. The last clitorectomy as a medical treatment for the control of masturbation was done by a physician in the United States in the 1950s. So, you know, we can laugh all we want, but horrible. These are the two purveyors of American unhappiness, in my opinion. America's sex-negative attitudes today come as a direct result of these pseudo-scientific false theories developed in the 18th and 19th and early 20th century. These celebrity, Western, pseudo-medical, quasi-religious authorities. So, on to the last two myths. Married people don't masturbate, particularly happily married people don't masturbate. Most certainly happily married, happily partnered people don't masturbate. And if they do, it's a certain sign that the sex life of that relationship is lacking in some way. Or one partner has lost his or her sex appeal. Not true. Research reports that people tell us masturbation is another pleasurable experience entirely from partnered sex. Masturbation is enjoyed in its own right. Give it a break. Not only that, but masturbation is helpful for reducing tension and anxiety. How many of you have masturbated before a test and it's helped you get a better score? Yes, it has. Diminishing menstrual cramps. It's one of the best natural ways to diminish menstrual cramps when orgasm results. That doesn't work for boys, but it works very well for girls. And actually helps to stimulate delivery when the time is near. So the next time you're going to have a baby and it's getting close to time and you have carried long enough, try masturbation to orgasm. It's the best. Masturbation will interfere with the development of future sexual capacities. That's a sneaky one that people say, oh, you know, if you masturbate, you'll never really have a fulfilling sex life with a partner. Not true. It doesn't interfere with a good sex life with a partner, nor does it interfere with achieving orgasm with a partner. In fact, actually, research demonstrates the opposite finding. When women who are orgasmic in partnered sex and who have also masturbated to orgasm were compared with orgasmic women who had never masturbated to orgasm, those who had masturbated reported having more orgasms, experiencing greater sexual desire, reported higher self-esteem, reported greater marital sexual satisfaction, required less time to become aroused, and were more likely to be multiply orgasmic. So the evidence suggests that masturbation assists a person in learning about how their body works, what they enjoy and don't like, all of which enhances partnered sex. So masturbation helps assure a more fulfilling coupled sex life, as illustrated as follows. And I'm going to go quickly through this because I'm going past my time as usual. I'll just tell you where it comes from. This is from Pompeii, 1st century, Japanese shunga. These are all happy couples of all kinds. Here are some imaginary Mongols having fun on their horse. You know, the horse seems happy too, but I won't go into that. 19th century, Chinese ivory figures. 18th century ivory European. It's a secret box. French, 19th century. Greek, 3rd century BCE. Chinese, a male couple from the 1700s. Persian, 1660, male couple. Japanese shunga, woodcut, 2 women. 2 women also, Japanese, 1850. French, 2 women, and somebody watching from the window. Why not? Watching doesn't hurt anybody either. And this is a neoclassic painting by Nicolas Octave Toussaint. The Kinsey Institute has the original, but the drawings are in the Louvre. 1824 to 1898 was this artist. And finally, I'm going to end with saying, I hope this presentation will stimulate your thinking, alert you to the likelihood that you are probably harboring much more misinformation about sexuality than you realize. I hope it will encourage you to question all your beliefs about sexuality, to make certain that they are based on tested fact and the latest scientific information. I encourage you to ask questions about anything you read in the media about sexuality and keep up with new findings. And most importantly, for a joyful sex life, I encourage you to communicate more often and more fully with your partner about what you want and need and what he or she wants and needs, and have a sense of humor, like this Japanese couple from the 1800s who are dressing up one of their natural toys. Finally, to promote the concept for yourself and for those you love and care about, that everyone, no matter their age, deserves joy and pleasure from her or his sex life. Most important, don't forget to have fun. Thank you.